Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Let's Combinate Drugs and Devices. I am your host, Subhi Saadeh, and we are graced and honored today by Usman Ahmad, who is the CEO of Quetzal Therapeutics, former CEO of Nexus Pharmaceuticals. Welcome, Usman.
Thank you for having me.
Your story is a really interesting one, and kind of the angle that I want to take starting it off is your first foray into pharma generics was like transitioning from finance, which is your background, to working as one of the first employees at, the company that your parents went all in on after they exited their big pharma careers.
Mhm.
So you were kind of like the marketing finance brains behind it, coming from a bunch of big financial institutions. When you were assessing which generics to go after, how did you decide those first few molecules beyond just looking at patent expiry dates or something else that would, beyond looking at things like just patent expiry dates to help pick the right molecule?
Sure. I think, this would be one area that I've been able to reflect on over the last, I would say now I've been in the industry for 16 years, is that oftentimes you have to find your ability to win. So it's like they call what's your right to win? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Peter Thiel's book, Zero to One, but he actually talks a lot about how with startups, he sees this all the time where they try to go after these really big markets. And if it's a really big market, there's already an established dominant player. And how are you going to compete? The bigger company. So when I first started, it was just me, my mom, my dad at Nexus Pharmaceuticals. We were obviously very small, 100% virtual. So the lab we were using was an outsourced lab. The facility we were using was an outsourced manufacturer. We obviously had very little resources compared to a lot of the big guys in our field versus or Pfizer, for example. So we needed to figure out how are we going to win? What's going to be our right to win? So I would say I took that mindset, and that's always been my mantra throughout our career. So as we are building Nexus, and even the same kind of philosophy applies to Quetzal Therapeutics. So I took that mindset of like, when I'm going to do product selection, what is my right to win? So I would say one of the really unique aspects in the generics industry specifically is all the data is available. So IQVIA, they're the big behemoth in the industry. Everyone knows exactly what products are currently in the market, what's their revenue, how much is it selling for. All of this information is available. So I would say my mindset around our initial product selection was, how about we focus where the other guys don't? Because that's where we're going to be successful. Because if I compete head to head with a Baxter or a Hospira at the time or Fresenius Kabi, or they're going to have more resources than me. So instead of trying to compete head to head in a losing battle, let me go where they're not. So almost like fishing, or yeah, fishing where they're not fishing. So the first kind of really big products that we noticed was in 2012, we had identified this product called isoproterenol. And it was a really unique product where it had been around for a very long time. It was probably 30 plus years. It had been off patent for years and years. But what I noticed was two really critical aspects. Actually, I would say three really critical aspects about the product. A, despite it being around for so long, it was still the standard of care. So in this field of electrocardiology, it was used consistently, very high, I would say, tolerability. Like physicians just really enjoyed using that product and preferred it. Secondly, the market size I noticed was growing. So for us, I'd seen it go from 8 million to 12 million to 16 million. So if you're a huge company, $16 million is not going to move the needle. But for us at that time, it was just me, my mom, my dad. That was an astronomical amount of money. I would say identifying the fact that this is a small product, it's growing. The big guys are not going to focus on it. I know it's already standard of care, so I don't think it's going to be, it had some sort of price elasticity where I noticed that as the price was increasing, people were still using this product. I think all those kind of were light bulbs in my head. And then the third critical piece was there was no API available. So the DMF was super, super old. It was being used by the innovator who was Hospira at the time. So in my mind, I'm like, no, it's a super small product that's growing, that's used by all the physicians. My right to win, why don't we find someone that can synthesize the API because there's no API available. So I know other folks are not working on it right now. And secondly, the manufacturing was a little complex. It was a highly oxygen sensitive product. There's other kind of unique manufacturing, I would say, maybe challenges associated with it that I knew we had the R&D expertise given kind of my mom and dad's 60 plus years of experience. So that was my mindset. So find our right to win.
So talk about their background a little more, because
Oh,
as far as addressing manufacturability issues, finding API suppliers, like that's not your foray.
exactly. In terms of my parents' background, so they were both chemists by training. They actually met at University of Karachi in Pakistan. And my father was an analytical chemist and my mom was an organic chemist. So they obviously had tremendous experience in the pharmaceutical sector. So my dad, he had worked at basically almost any pharma company there were. He had worked at a lot of the behemoths, Pfizer, Glaxo, and then Sanofi. We moved all over the country. We lived in Ohio, New Jersey, North Carolina, Arizona, Kansas, back to Ohio. And in Ohio, he worked at this company called Ben Menu Laboratories, where he really learned about generic injectables and the growing market. And that was in the late 90s. And then my mother, given her organic chemistry background, she worked for various R&D labs. Anytime we would move, she would find another job in another R&D formulation lab. So together they had tremendous experience on the formulation and development side. And then my father also had a lot of experience on the regulatory side. So he understood kind of the regulatory pathways, challenges around ANDAs. So I'd say that was his expertise. And my mom obviously had tremendous kind of chemistry knowledge. So they were able to. So when I first came up, I basically asked my parents, can you make this drug? I literally remember looking up isoproterenol and going up to my dad and mom and say, hey, do you think we can make it? Because on the business wise, it makes sense. And my dad would, and this was like, I would say one of the unique advantages of having a family business where it's, I can just call him at 7 p.m. or we can discuss at dinner. And that was really, I would say, what's the best way of saying it? It gave us a leg up where there was no egos. It was just like, can you make this or can you not? And they were like, yes, we think we can.
And so when you brought to them the idea of this specific drug, given their experience, was it immediate that they were like, yeah, we can do it? The oxygen sensitivity, the fact that there is no API available, no issue.
I would not say it was no issue, but it was like, it was more of, can you do this? And they're like, I'm sure we can figure this out.
Like it's possible. You're not crazy.
100%. Yes. Yeah. Because I would bring up products and my dad would tell me there's a product called iron sucrose, for example. It just,
I was actually gonna say iron sucrose specifically because recently they came out with the first generic, like in the
yes,
last, I don't know, 2 months or something like that.
correct. Correct.
And I know that one, there's been a lot of generic companies that have been trying to deal with it. And it also has like injectability difficulties because of just its viscosity.
Correct. Yeah. So to your point, like there would be definitely products where I would say that was where a lot of their expertise and experience came in handy because, for example, dad would tell me this product just like off, not maybe off limits is not the right word. He was like, Spawn, not worth our time. I've been at really large companies and we've been trying to work on it. I just don't think it's feasible. So I think to your point, not knowing what you don't know as well is also super helpful because that also helped in our product selection where it's like we know what our limitations are. And I think that was what was really helpful where that kind of helped also narrow and focus my approach to product selection where it's I can't do iron sucrose, I can't do these long acting injectables or at that time. So I think that was really helpful.
And so the reason that I want to focus on this one specifically, or the early drugs, is because they became the fodder for your ability to go after bigger and bigger projects. It kind of became like the law
Correct,
of
correct.
compounding almost. So your initial successes made possible your later ones. And so with this particular one, how did you find an API supplier where there was limited supply outside of whoever the RLD was?
So I think to your point, it was also that was also one of the challenges because oftentimes we would go to a lot of these large API suppliers. And at that time, they're like, hey, this is not worth our effort. We're not going to custom synthesize for something this small. So similarly, just when we found, like in terms of how we were talking about right to win, we found a small company that had done starting material, but had never gotten a DMF approved. So we approached this company in North Carolina through a contact of my dad's and told them, hey, we have a perfect project for you to get your first FDA approved DMF. It's small in quantity. we can make it in the US because he had a very small kind of facility in the US. So it was for us, we were finding a like-minded business partner where it's like the API quantity is small. It could be your first foray into DMFs. We think it could be an attractive opportunity for you to get other customers then as we go forward because they had never been FDA approved. So our basically part of the equation was like, if you can synthesize this for us, we can help you with the regulatory and quality standards you need to meet.
So I have familiarity with type 3 DMFs. I don't like when we're talking about a DMF for an API, what's the incentive for a company like this company that you ended up partnering with to be like, yeah, it's small, we have goals, but what is their incentive? Like, why is the DMF?
I would say in terms of like as opposed to like tablets or ointments or otherwise in the injectable space, you just need a very small quantity oftentimes in the injectable space. And since these are higher margin, higher value products a lot of the times, if you can find a US approved source that has good FDA standards, I think that can be a good road to custom synthesis for other companies that are interested in getting their products. So we told them because I think a lot of
Oh,
times people have concerns about taking high value custom projects to China, to India, just
India,
around
right?
IP. So we said, hey, if you can do this custom project for us, this should open the door for other customers. You can tell other customers as well, or other pharma companies, like, hey, if you have a really specific API that's of high value that you want to keep domestically in the US, that you're concerned about IP, we can be your partner.
And so you were able to overcome some of these challenges, whether it's manufacturing or the sourcing challenges. You launched the product.
I would say that was also a really big inflection point as well, too, because, oh, all right, actually, is that okay if I interrupt you on that? Yeah.
On you go.
We were actually so the isoproterenol story was very unique in the sense that when we first started working on it, the product was pretty small but growing. And then all of a sudden, I think I had mentioned there was another company that had acquired the product, gotten a lot of visibility for the price increase. But as I had mentioned earlier as well, it was standard of care, so hospitals were forced to use it. But when we were the first generic, everyone was able to see because the FDA publicly publishes on the complete assessment report that they update every few weeks who's got what DMFs. So then the cat was out of the bag. So around 2015, 2016, everyone started approaching us. So a lot of the big pharma folks, like I think it was Mylan at the time, a couple other companies, they all start approaching us and saying, hey, we see you have, I think we had 5 offers. Everyone saw you guys have the isoproterenol DMF that we know you're working on it. It's obviously at that time, then it became 100 plus, I think it was like 200 some $1 million product. So everyone's like, wait, you guys are about to be first generic on this critical product. Everyone else is significantly behind you. So we started getting a lot of inbounds to acquire the product. But for us, we thought, you know what, instead of just giving the value or instead of just selling the product, we really want to commercialize it ourselves. We want to build a commercial platform. And we think this could be a first key building block. It's a
Was
really
hol-
quick
was
decision.
was that was that a hard decision? It sounds like it would
Um,
be.
It was definitely a difficult decision because at that time we had gotten offers in the low couple hundred millions, and it's for us as a family that was like more money than we had ever thought about. So it's definitely I would say a little bit of a difficult decision, but once again, I think me and my siblings and my parents were like, we don't think our story is done just yet. So that's why we decided that we're going to commercialize this opportunity ourselves.
And so then you move to commercialize, which has its own challenges. Um, what I mean, what was that like? Sorry, I'm gonna ask a question. This I'll remove in the edit. But is this a product where when you went commercial, the RLD started having issues?
They did, yeah. So RLD
Yeah.
started having issues, and
So
then
let me go back and ask a question because I'm gonna clean this up. So I'm gonna pause for 1 second and then I'll ask the question again. And so as you move to commercialize and get the product on the market, some things started to happen in parallel, right? So could you maybe talk about what the commercialization process was like for this product?
yeah, so at that time, the company Valiant Pharmaceuticals, they started having significant financial and commercial issues. And then our product was also better in the fact that ours was a vial versus an ampule. So we were faced with this really critical decision on should we or should we not commercialize it. But for us, we really felt that we had such a compelling value proposition that we were able to go to these hospitals and say, hey, we'll be the first generic. We could get all the GPO contracts, all the wholesaler contracts, And we ended up building out, when to your question on what it takes, we had never built a proper sales and marketing team, but we were fortunate once again, given my parents' connections, we were able to find some really seasoned folks who had been in the generic injectable sales space for 20 plus years. So given they knew our parents, we were able to hire a couple of senior folks. And then we also built our own network of just really, I would say, top-notch sales professionals. So that was our kind of first foray. So we start getting these products approved. So isoproterenol was our first approval. We go from zero to $100 million in net sales. So that it was a great first product to have, I would say.
And then the 0 to 100 was in the first year?
The first year, yes.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. So this was a humongous opportunity for us.
Yeah. And then you started looking at other molecules, right?
Correct. Yes. For us, we always knew we wanted to transition into more complex and branded products. This will lead to how I founded Quetzal Therapeutics. But for us, we knew that I would say two things. We knew that there's other opportunities in the more complex and branded space. And then secondly, we are like, we now have the R&D engine. So we've proven we can do these niche complex injectable products. And then secondly, we've now built our sales and marketing infrastructure. So I was like, we've got the R&D and regulatory expertise. Now we have the sales and marketing expertise. The only piece missing to really provide a true platform company is a manufacturing infrastructure. So that's when we came up with the decision, and basically it was January of or December of 2017. We're like, hey, we've done so well with this isoproterenol product. We're making $10 million a month with it. Why don't we reinvest this back and have our dream of building our own manufacturing facility? Because then we ultimately control our own destiny. We can manufacture products. We can already do the development. We know we can market. Now we can manufacture these products that we've always not had ability to. And then over the last, 10 years that I was at Nexus, from 2009 to 2017, 2018, we had seen it was so hard to find manufacturing facilities. So I already had this thesis in my head, like, we need a manufacturing facility because injectables capacity is at an all-time low. It's just hard to find. FDA kept increasing their requirements. They're like, you need isolator facilities. You can't do just clean rooms anymore, and like closed labs. And so we just saw, and to your point as well about expanding our product portfolio, we were like, hey, let's start working on other products. We knew that prefilled syringes, for example, we have products that we wanted to work on in prefilled syringe. We're like, there's not enough manufacturing capacity. We had lyophilized products we want to work on. We're like, there's not enough lyophilized capacity. So I feel like the facility and our product expansion all went hand in hand.
So when you're going through and how apparent was that lack of available manufacturing capacity? And what drove you to selecting the modalities that you ended up going with? Lyo, dry powder, prefilled syringes you mentioned, even automated assembly. Those are all like you have to pick, right? You have to pick where you
Yes.
stop.
So I would say this is going to be my dig at PE and finance bros. I knew there was at the end of the day, did we do something novel by building a manufacturing facility? Obviously not. Anyone else can build it. But I think what people fail to realize is just how much time and how specialized these facilities are, and how dynamic the environment is around FDA regulations and sterile manufacturing. So I think if you're not in that industry and you think of, oh, if you're just making widgets, obviously you could put up a factory and create XYZ widgets. But I think people don't understand how complex sterile manufacturing is, especially pre-COVID and with the mRNA vaccine rollout and the shortages there. So in terms of why we were picking the modalities that we picked, once again, that goes back to our product selection in the generic space, where we would and actually I would say as we are evolving our therapeutic indications along with the type of products that we're doing in terms of complexity, we would identify really great opportunities, but we would say, oh, wait, they're Lyo. So then we would try to find a Lyo CMO. And then I was like, we can't find any Lyo CMOs. And we already have 10 products that we've identified meet the business criteria to do. So let's put a Lyo in our facility. So on our prefilled syringe product, we had this product that was the first ready to use ephedrine sulfate. We went looking for a very long time to find prefilled syringe capacity, and it was getting harder and harder to find. So that was like what we used. We're like, if we know there's products out there that if we could manufacture them would be successful and profitable, let's just make those modalities in our facility.
how did you decide as far as the level of which to commit? Because syringe lines, it depends on how many up the manufacturing line is. Like, do you have the yes, you basically I'll ask the question a different way. As you were going through, like you mentioned 10 products that you had slated for Lyo and some that you had slated for prefilled syringe. Yes, we need to build a Lyo line. Yes, we need to build a prefilled syringe line. But how big that line is, how did you know that you weren't taking on too much?
Yeah, so I would say when we were doing our facility, we were really fortunate. We had a really experienced team because that is, to your point, a very true statement where, when we started our manufacturing facility in 2017, there was 4 other companies that were also starting the design or construction of their facility. And when we sold to Lilly last year, we were the only one out of those 5. So it was us and 4 others that ended up transacting. The other 4 all went out of business or bankrupt, those businesses. And I'd say a big reason why was they did poor selection of their equipment. So what we did is there was this gentleman, Tim Hanrahan. He had been in the industry 30 plus years. Our vice president of operations, his name was John Cook. He had spent 30 plus years in generic injectables. So when we were scoping out these lines, because to your point, just saying you want a prefilled syringe line, there's probably a million different variations that you can go. So we were really, I would say, cognizant of the fact of, okay, what does our product portfolio look like now versus 5 years from now? And what are going to be the demands of the facility? Because we knew how much of a lead time you need. So I would say that was always in our mind where we're using our product portfolio to really guide our equipment selection. When we selected our prefilled syringe line, one of the reasons that Lilly did end up acquiring our facility was because we were one of the few facilities that had a high-speed, fully isolated prefilled syringe line from Optima, who is one of the leaders in that prefilled syringe category. So I would say a lot of our decisions around equipment selection was being driven by our product portfolio.
What was the average throughput of that line? Do you know?
I think it was a 6 up filler. I think it depends on like if you're doing 1 ml long versus 10 ml syringe. I don't remember like exact, but for example, on like we have a Bausch and Strobel high speed line that was, I'd like to say maybe a couple hundred a minute, but if you did the 2R or vice, so they were substantial in terms of the capacity they could drink.
That's yeah, that's pretty great. And it could fill 1 to 10 ml.
Our prefilled syringe line could do 1 to 10 ml, and then our vial line could do anywhere from 2. We had change parts all the way up to, I think, 50, I believe. We had 2 10, 2 5 10s, 20 50s.
That's awesome. And so you were with your prefilled syringes, you didn't get into any kind of assembly. It was bright stock.
Yeah, so I think that was enough. So literally, we ended up selling our facility in 2024. We had just received our filling line. So we had another warehouse
Did you
where
even commission it or
we had already started the process of the validation and qualification, and we'd
okay,
run some batches, but we had already started
commercial?
planning for all of that, but kind of just swooped in. And so we never even got to get to that phase. So we never ran any commercial product off that line.
So we talked about the first drug that came to market. The the sale of the Pleasant Prairie facility was, I'm sure, like the biggest moment of your life, probably. What was the lead up to that? And were they like evaluating other sites? Like maybe talk about the time of the sale, how much you sold for, because it's pretty huge.
Yeah, so obviously I'll make sure to share whatever's in the public
Public,
domain,
of
but
course.
in 2023, so after we had built our facility and word started getting around in 2023 that this company called Nexus Pharmaceuticals, they have a brand new facility and that we had just received our first FDA approval. I think we had one 483 for a minor observation or whatnot, something really insignificant. We started getting bombarded by big pharma. I think we had 6 different companies come approach us in 2023 to find out about our CDMO capacity and capabilities. But at that time, we were actually not interested in being a CDMO in 2023 because for us, our focus was like, hey, we're working on Nexus products. We're not interested in being a CDMO for anyone else. And every board discussion, when we're really fortunate, we had a really seasoned board. We'd always go back and forth because for us, the big Pro of us being a CDMO is obviously you don't have any idle time or facilities, but there is a big con where it's like all of a sudden now, what if there's friction between Nexus products versus our CDMO customer? If you have big pharma as a client, they're going to have their own quality system. So it was a very back and forth discussion me and my family would have on should we or should we not. But I would say probably towards the maybe third or fourth quarter of 2023, the volume of requests we started to get was becoming significant. And our big question was like, I wonder how are we're not even advertising. Why are all these companies coming to us? And later we found out that our actually equipment manufacturers, they were the ones getting questions, and they were basically becoming our business development. So someone would go to Bausch and Strobel or Optima, some of these big pharma clients, and say, hey, I know our line isn't ready for 3 years, but we really need a facility that can do X, Y, Z. And all of them would say, oh, right now Nexus is the only one that can probably has the line that you need, that is FDA approved and has the capacity. So it started getting
Too much
overwhelmed,
to ignore.
too much to ignore. So then in January, we actually started what was called Nexus Pharma Services to try to address so we built out a whole division, Nexus Pharma Services, and then we started getting these RFPs. And then obviously Lilly was one of our first RFPs in January. And then I would say the really big tipping point or inflection point was when that Novo Nordisk Catalent deal happened. I think everyone started knowing that this capacity is really critical. And the Lilly deal, now it's public, they ended up giving us just a little shy of $1 billion for that facility. But yeah, that was what led to that.
And so you retained all your products.
Correct. Yeah. So we still have the Nexus Pharmaceuticals products. We still have our entire product portfolio. For us, they were already at third party contract manufacturers.
You never actually transferred them into your facility.
No, we had actually just started all the site transfer process. But then when the Lilly deal happened, we just decided to stay at our third party CMOs.
Yeah, so that's crazy. Like I just imagine like somebody initiating a change control to transfer from one site to another, and like reason for change is site is gone.
Yes, feel
That's
bad for our tech transfer team. We had to do so much work, and then all of a sudden we're like, "Oh, actually, we're staying at our CMO."
Is there a plan to build another one?
That's a good question. I get that question quite a lot, and maybe this is on the personal side or what we've done. So after the Lilly sale, obviously it was a big windfall for me and my siblings. Unfortunately, my mother, she had passed away just a few months earlier, and then my father, unfortunately, he had an illness, so he was no longer able to work as well. So after the Lilly deal, we were all presented with this really unique opportunity where it's like now financially we were all able to make decisions on what we want to do with the rest of our lives, I would say. And it's been really unique to see kind of everyone taking their own path. But for me, I always wanted to start a therapeutics business, work on branded products, which is how I ended up starting Quetzal Therapeutics. We do get asked that question quite a bit. Would you ever want to make a new facility? And I think it's valid in the sense that we have a lot of experience and we've been able to do it. I feel like I learned a lot through that process. But for me personally, I think I'm ready for like a new challenge, I would say, which is why I started Quetzal Therapeutics.
I see. So it's not something you have like a desire to do.
Yes. Yeah.
So then why the rare disease space? Because like you could get into, is it also the same thing as before of like right to win?
100%, yes. Because when I was thinking about what I want to do and the impact I want to have, I understandably, I totally can see why for these big pharma companies they're like Lilly's got, I think, what, $700 billion market cap. They need to work on drugs that are really going to cause significant or be able to cure large populations and create significant ROI, which I
Because
think
it's
is small.
percentage based. Because
Correct.
even to 20, 50 million,
Nothing can
small,
move.
not even a percent.
Not even for them, for example, I remember I was talking to one of the folks at a large pharma company. He told me, Usman, we don't even look at any product that has less than 2 billion in annual sales. So obviously, like there's lots of diseases that are a lot smaller and a patient population. So for me, I thought exactly as you had touched on in terms of the right to win. I know a lot of the big companies are not looking in this space. I know there's a significant patient need, and I still believe that, for me, I don't need a $2 billion product to be financially viable. So I would say those three factors kind of really maybe led me to the rare disease space.
And you have two products.
Correct. Yeah. So we have one product we're working on. So I guess there's two ways of looking at it. Our first product is an oral arsenic trioxide platform. So the current treatment, so there's this really rare leukemia called APL, and it affects, I think, maybe 2 to 3,000 patients between the US and Europe. And fortunately, there is a cure. Before it was highly deadly, people used to die very quickly. And then in the early 2000s, this company created a treatment using arsenic. So it was called IV arsenic trioxide. And on one hand, it was really helpful where the disease was cured, but the patient burden is terrible. You have 140 different infusions, significant size. Since it's so rare, you have to go to a major academic center, usually just significant financial and quality of life implications. We're about to kick off our phase 3 on an oral formulation. So this would be a game changer for patients, for the healthcare system. 140 infusions. You're putting significant strain on the healthcare system. For these patients themselves, they have to get ports put in and significant side effects, and it's extremely disruptive to your life. And for these practitioners, they don't want people in these chairs if we're able to come up with an oral formulation. So we're really excited about hopefully being able to provide an oral option. So we're beginning our phase 3 shortly. And then secondly, there's a product around infectious disease there's this disease called Naegleria fowleri. And it's actually an ultra rare disease where, unfortunately, I'm not sure if you've ever heard or like kids are swimming in a lake or in an untreated pool and it's called the brain eating amoeba. We feel like we have a really great opportunity to find a treatment there. Both of these products, if it wasn't for us, most likely I don't think many companies would want to spend the dollars to really invest, just given the fact that the ROI is probably not in the tens of billions of dollars. But for us, we still feel like there's significant patient need. We can help address a lot of issues with the treatments in the current healthcare setting. And yeah, for us, it's just maybe our ethos of, maybe looking where others aren't.
And so the 140 infusions turns into what?
Well, so
Like
I mean,
how many,
it
how,
is a
like
cure.
what,
So ours will be a capsule formulation. So we're still
uh,
working through what's the dosing regimen going to be,
but
but you're
ballpark
roughly, hopefully 5 capsules a day, maybe. So we're still
for
obviously,
the same amount of time?
yeah, obviously it would be the same treatment length, but like all of these are areas that we're going to figure out, like how are we going to dose? What's the treatment length going to be, whatnot. So these are all opportunities that we can help really with the quality of life.
How did you get the molecules themselves? Were they acquired?
Yeah, this one we had
Or
acquired from a company called, the first one was 2101 was from a company called Syros Pharmaceuticals. Unfortunately, they had some financial difficulties, so we were able to acquire that product. And then the second one was from actually a university. So we're still like in CDA negotiations, so I can't disclose it, but the second university had developed a treatment for that.
with you moving towards the so you took a full swing from like generic to ultra rare disease preclinical, right?
Yes.
Like I would consider those probably the two extremes of the spectrum, maybe barring things like CAR T or something like that's
Yes.
way out there. Cell therapy maybe
Yep.
is the one. Like now you're working on stuff like clinical trials, phase dependent GMPs, recruiting patients and all the stuff that comes with that that's way different, like to the point that you made earlier. Like the pro of generics is everything is available. The data is
Yes.
available.
100%. 100%.
Manufacturing is not. The reverse engineering has some challenges and stuff like that. So it's completely different. Do you feel like everything is new, or do you feel like most of the things that you learned with Nexus are transferable?
I would definitely say that there's a lot of similar, like I had this philosophy in life on compounding where it's like just if you stay in the same area and you compound every single day, you learn a little bit more. And slowly that little bit becomes like a pretty big, I would say, circle in terms of your maybe industry specific knowledge. So obviously you're 100% correct. We had never done a clinical trial before, but what I did have was a really fantastic network of folks that could connect me. So similarly to when we started our manufacturing facility, we had never built a sterile fill finish facility, but what we did know is people who could and who could tell us, hey, this is what you need. This is the resources and the human capital and kind of the pieces to make that puzzle. So similarly here, I understand CMC. I understand pharmaceuticals and so I was like, what are our major gaps? We really need a solid team around clinical trials. So I went out and I was really fortunate. We have a fantastic board at Quetzal. We have Dr. Jonathan Chang. He used to run oncology at Merck, at Bristol Myers. So he joined our board. We have a fantastic chief medical officer, Dr. Shahid Abedin. He was a hematologist oncologist. He practiced, I think he still practices on, one weekend a month. He had worked at Immunocore, AstraZeneca, another company. So we were able to fill in the gaps and really find folks who understand the areas that I didn't. That's been my philosophy in life. Build a team, always find, I think they always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, find a new room. So I definitely feel like that a lot now, where I'm asking a lot of questions around, okay, how does patient enrollment work? How are we going to select our CRO provider? But a lot of it takes me back to 2017, where we're like, how do we build a manufacturing facility? What equipment are we going to select? What contractor are we going to go with? How do we get FDA approvals? I guess that last project gave me the confidence to start this one.
How has your own confidence changed? Like, is it now more like, oh yeah, this is a decision that I need to pick I need to pick a partner, like whether it's a CRO or who our equipment, like I've picked equipment suppliers before. I've had to do like site selection where we're going to break ground. This is just a new version of that. So,
Yeah,
do you feel like your confidence is different, even though it's a new area?
that's a really good question. So in terms of my confidence, I think a lot of times, something that's really important to me is like my faith. So trusting in God. So I would say, I know if I have good intentions, as we say, like, inshallah, like God willing, good things will happen. For me, what gave me the confidence to start this was after I became CEO after my mom and dad got sick, which was a very difficult time for me. Both my parents, they're failing health. I was now all of a sudden in charge of 200 some people, and we had this massive project. But definitely, God willing, it was a really big success. So I would say that gave me the confidence. I've been through really difficult times before, but I trusted God, and I knew I would find, if I had good intentions, the outcome will be okay. So I feel like I took that same confidence here, where I was like, what is my intentions? I really want to bring groundbreaking treatments to patients who unfortunately don't have that option now. And then I know I've got enough of a network and I'm humble enough to know, like, there's so much I don't know. I'm going to find people that know more than me and trust in them. So I would say if I have any sort of secret sauce to my success, is finding really smart and talented people and maybe coalescing and building a team. So I think having that kind of project and seeing after the Lilly sale, and just even building up before that, like it was just me, my mom and dad at Nexus, and we are able to build this company. So I would say it definitely gave me the confidence that, I don't know the outcome. We do have to run a phase 3. You never know at the end of the day, but I do feel like I'm going to try to give it my best, and I have the confidence that we'll give it a really good shot.
Yeah. So that's a interesting take of just make sure my intention is good and that I'm sincere and whatever the outcome, it'll be fine.
Yes, because I think there's this really good book called Thinking in Bets by, forgetting the author's name, Annie. It's going to come to me. But in Thinking in Bets, she talks about that oftentimes the wrong question is, was it luck or was it skill? And she was like, the actual question is, what was luck and what was skill? Because she was saying in any endeavor you take, you're always going to get there's always going to be factors of luck and factors of skill. So what I try to take about that is, like I saw in our manufacturing facility, there were opportunities where we did get lucky, where something just serendipitously happened and it gave us a great outcome. But there was also lots of skill involved. So I always take that mindset into, it's like I have to have good intentions because I can't control all the outcomes and all the variables, but I can just control my decision making. So I'm going to try to make the best decisions with the information available. And sometimes the cards play out, sometimes they don't.
You mentioned the situation with the
That's,
R
yes, sorry.
Annie Dew,
Annie Duke.
Annie Duke. You mentioned the situation with the RLD that had manufacturing issues, totally out of your hands, but set you up
Total.
for success. You also mentioned though 4 out of the 5 similar facilities ended up going bankrupt where you sold for $1 billion basically.
Mhm.
And so we talked about the right equipment that you ended up choosing, but did you have it on some authority that like they picked the wrong equipment, or they picked the wrong location, or they picked, what
You
was
know,
the common?
I would say the common denominator is, and this is like another lesson where it's like you hear it throughout your career very early on, but you never really realize it until you maybe look back 20, 30 years. It was like when I first started at JP Morgan, one of my mentors, he told me, he was like, Usman, you know, the most important thing you're going to take out of this analyst program. And I was like, oh, what, like modeling? He was like, no, the people you meet and the relationships you develop, you'll see later. And like looking back on it now, like the reason we were successful was our people. Like John Cook was an amazing head of manufacturing. Heidi Brazil was an amazing head of quality. We had our first IT hire, this guy Bart Sudal was like a superstar. We are so fortunate that obviously not everyone we hired, but I would say this is probably a rough estimate, like 90% of the people we hired were just amazing. And
Next level.
everyone next level. And I think everyone was drawn to the fact that a lot of them had worked at big pharma before, or they had worked at companies where the culture wasn't what they were looking for. And they're like, oh, this is a really unique mission. We're going to build a manufacturing facility, because at the time in 2018, everyone was like, don't build in the US. Obviously now under the Trump administration, everyone is saying, bring it back. In 2018, everyone was like, you guys are nuts, go to China. So I think people were really passionate about the project, and we were able to get the best and brightest. So it's like when folks tell you it's all about the people, now looking back, I'm like, the reason we were successful is because we had amazing people. And that's what I'm hoping to replicate at Quetzal as well.
Last question. You mentioned a couple books here that you mentioned Zero to One earlier. You just mentioned Thinking in Deaths.
Thinking
Last
in
question
bets.
is
Sorry, thinking in
in
bets. Thinking in
bet.
bets.
Oh,
B-E,
bet.
bets.
Bet.
Yeah.
Bet. Okay.
Thinking in
Thinking
bets.
in,
Yep.
what is final question is, what is a book that changed your life?
A book that changed my, I feel like there's been so many books that have changed my life. A few that come to mind, probably Good to Great is a fantastic book, just talking about businesses. A New Earth, Eckhart Tolle. I love that book. I think we had mentioned this a little bit earlier. I have this like saying, faith is really important to me. And for me, the Quran is like a really important, because sometimes I'll look back at those teachings and knowing that you're not alone. So I would say that had a profound impact on me. That book I just mentioned to you, Thinking in Bets, that really changed my decision making as well. Yeah, quite a few books. I should come up with a list, I think.
Well, all right, man. Where can people find you?
Well, yeah, we have as I think you touched on, the Quetzal Therapeutics. We're really excited. We're going to launch our phase 3 shortly. So we'll be at a lot of the shows coming up and talking about our research. We'll be at American Society of Hematology, ASH. I'm based in Chicago. I have a passion for kind of mentorship and entrepreneurship. I'm able to be found in Chicago pretty easily.
Awesome. People can reach you on LinkedIn.
Yes, LinkedIn. Yep.
This was I'm gonna ask the question one more time, if you could just include LinkedIn in the answer, if like
Yes.
people want to
Yeah.
reach you, or the Quetzal website. Usman, this was great. Where can people find you?
I was talking about my new ventures, Quetzal Therapeutics, quetzaltx.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. So yeah, I'm around in the Chicago area, so feel free to reach out via LinkedIn or through our website.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, man. This was
No
great.
problem. Is that okay, Sumi?
Oh, dude,